What is up, loners? What is up? Today we came in rocking the double tie-dye right here. That's how we do it.
Yours is like bleach tie-dye. Mine's like true tie-dye.
Episode 89, roll that intro.
He's fake. I'm kidding.
What's up,
I
everyone?
actually picked out that shirt.
What's up, everyone? We're back again with another video for y'all. We hope you've been enjoying our videos and our channels, and we really do thank you guys for commenting, liking, subscribing, and especially jumping over to our vlog channel. All right, come follow us on our adventures and help grow that channel, please.
Please.
Yeah. All right. So today we're gonna do Is Life Better in the USA or Europe? And it's a review from
Nathaniel Drew.
Yeah, I'll put the original in the description, but I believe he's someone who moved to Paris or somewhere in Europe but he's been living there for a long time. So it's good to get a perspective from someone who's lived both
I agree.
lives.
I was gonna say I like getting perspective if somebody's fully lived in two different parts of the world.
Yeah. Let's begin.
It turns out humans are not the same everywhere. Who you are is at least partially influenced by where you are. Your environment literally has an impact on you. And if you don't believe me, studies show this. And this is a dynamic that's influencing all of us, including me, as I've moved from one continent to another. The tug of war between the US and Europe is just so intriguing to me. It just feels like this endless battle between the new and the old world in the West. There's no right and wrong, obviously, when it comes to a discussion like this of cultural comparison. There's just trade-offs. It turns out that you can't have it all. I think the human race really benefits as a species from our differences. Plus, it's really fun to articulate the things that I'm seeing take place in the world. And so that's the inspiration behind this piece, comparing the life that I've lived for 19 years in the US to the one that I've lived for 5 years here in Europe, and how my view of things continues to evolve. Now, national stereotypes are nothing new, right? One of the easiest ones to point to is the idea that there's more introversion in Asia, for example. Generally speaking, massive generalization, and more extroversion in other places, like Brazil.
Well, sorry to stop so early, but I would say I think there is a stereotype of introversion in Asia, but I think that you can't just put all of Asia into that statistic, because I think like certain Asian countries are more outgoing than other ones. Like I think people in like Japan are a little more shy than people in like Thailand or something. You know what I mean?
You know, I will say I've never looked at Asian countries as like introverts.
I have, only because I've heard it from like when I watch videos of people in Japan, the locals say like, oh, because we're shy people. We're a shy people. Like they say it a lot.
Yeah, I've never, I mean, like, hearing it, I can definitely see how it applies here and there, but that wasn't something that crossed my mind. Like, oh, they're very to themselves or shy, or, because the few places, or the few times we've gone, I don't feel that.
Yeah,
like,
but
I feel, granted, we haven't gone to Japan, which is my dream destination.
Yeah.
But Southeast and China, I mean, other than one part of China staring at us like, why are you white people here? It didn't seem like they were to themselves at all to me, anywhere.
Maybe they're more to themselves when like with foreigners.
Maybe I'm just completely wrong. I don't know. They're definitely not doing this. Like, they're not out on the street.
I know.
Throwing parades and things like that. I mean, I don't even know. Maybe they are, and I just didn't see it. But like, I don't look at Asia as
introverted.
Yeah. But I don't know.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm not from there, so obviously I can't speak.
Yeah.
There are exceptions to all generalizations, right?
Yeah.
But there's also a grain of truth. You know, the jokes that we make about these sorts of things wouldn't be funny if they were completely inaccurate. If I were to say, oh, the US is a quiet country that is very respectful to all other nations and doesn't make a lot of noise, I lose all credibility, right? You just don't believe me, because there's not really a lot of truth to that. Now, while I've already made a few pieces exploring cultural comparisons between different parts of the world, different countries and different regions, I want to dig a little bit deeper this time. Beyond superficial comparisons like, oh,
Europeans use air conditioning a lot less than Americans.
yes, produce is a lot cheaper and a lot higher quality in Europe than in the United States because the governments subsidize that sort of thing because people care about it a lot more. And yes, technology is a lot more affordable in the United States, partially because of taxation on imports, but also because as a society,
Sorry. Yes, it's a cultural thing that people in Europe care about the food that they're eating because they're taught to value it. We're not taught to value it here.
Yeah.
there's more of an orientation towards innovation. And one of the ways that keeping up with the Joneses manifests itself in the US is having the latest shiny thing. But I want to dig deeper into the character of these two continents and the trends that I'm noticing in people that live in these two continents.
Oh my God, there's no lanes. There are no lanes.
Fair warning, these are just my opinions. I am just sharing my observations that I see in the world and within myself. So take it or leave it. And if you disagree with something that I say, please feel free to share it in the comments. This is supposed to be fun. I find this sort of thing fun.
That is so funny. The way he's like, don't eat me alive because of me having a different opinion.
Yeah.
Because people really do love to be like,
Well,
you're wrong. You don't know anything.
especially nowadays.
You
I feel like it's
don't
more
get
now.
it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
For every point I'm going to make here, I'm going to really try, despite my biases, yes, I chose to live in Europe, explore the positives and negatives here, because I think there are positives and negatives on both sides. Americans are known for their patriotism, literally thinking to themselves, we are the best. And that's definitely not everyone, but enough people do think that it's a real thing. This really cracks me up because, that's got to be one of the fastest ways that I can think of to tick someone off. Like, who likes the guy who shows up at the party and won't stop talking about how they're the best? As I'm sure you can tell, this really annoyed me quite a bit, having grown up in the US but with immigrant parents. But a lot of Americans really believe this. And what doesn't help matters is the reality that a lot of people can point to the fact that the US is a world superpower. And look, there are a lot of really proud Europeans too, and maybe secretly they think they're the best. Okay, but it is a little bit harder to make the argument that you're the top dog right now if you're Greek or Italian, when in reality your moment to shine came centuries ago. For the record, I don't think there's a best country. I don't think in those terms. I think different countries are good at different things. And I don't feel like quantitative measurements like GDP say anything about the quality of a country. Now, the reason I bring all of this
100% true. I totally agree with that because you look at the quality of life in other places, it's just like it trumps here so much.
Yeah, also everything to a degree is subjective because what one group of people may value, another party may think that's like lower
Not
class
important,
or who cares or
Yep.
you don't know. And then things that we're told are like superior or we should care about, some people genuinely could not be bothered to give a fuck about, and it's preference.
Up is because of a weird feeling that I get when I return to the US. It's this feeling that I'm in the center of the universe, and obviously I know that's not the case, but the relationship between the US and Europe doesn't work the same way both ways. Here in Europe, there's a steady stream of news coming from the US, but when I'm over there, it feels like there isn't much talk about what's going on in the rest of the world unless something really big happens, like a war. Most mainstream media barely covers what's going on internationally, and unless you're a worldly American, and there definitely are some of those out there, you don't have very much of an idea of what's going on out there. In many ways, the US does feel geographically isolated. And maybe that's because the distance between Los Angeles and Las Vegas is bigger than the distance between Paris and London. It does feel like Europe is closer to a lot of the rest of the world. And because the distance is
That makes
smaller,
sense, yeah.
you can't pretend that there aren't neighbors all around you. France cannot pretend Germany isn't like right there. I personally believe this is a major factor in how we ended up with the stereotype that Americans are terrible at geography, world geography. Maybe also the stereotype that a lot of Americans are uncultured. And speaking of that, actually, culture is a confusing word.
This is true, and I will say in our defense, it is because one, it is not a huge topic in school. You kind of roughly go over a map from my memory, but you're mostly taught the states.
Yeah, well, I mean, because it is huge. Like when you look at it, we're really only close to like Canada. And that's it.
In Mexico. But,
Mexico. Sorry, Mexico.
And I am ashamed to say that it was up until I was in like 7th or 8th grade that my little brain didn't comprehend that Hawaii and Alaska weren't close together. Like they painted it like they were both in the same. They painted like Alaska was where Hawaii was.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Until I got older and I was like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
How is one known for being fucking
Freezing
cold?
and the other one being
And-
like a
yeah.
tropical paradise.
And
yeah.
then I took it upon myself in junior high to look at a map, and I was like, wait, like, why are we're given a different map in school? It's not, I mean, I don't know how it is nowadays in high school and junior
Yeah.
high, but I think they did that just to kind of fit things properly. So
Yeah.
that we're only showing the U.S.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, no, I wouldn't say it was something that they really enforced us knowing other parts of the world, because America really is huge. Like,
it is. It
yeah.
is.
You're it's like an accomplishment to know where all the states are in
It
itself.
to me, it is really cool. Like within the EU and stuff like that, how you can just jump from country to country so quick. That's
Yeah, it's
so cool. It's so cool.
convenient.
Yeah, and you see different cultures like so like fast. It's amazing.
I
I mean, you do that here too, kind of. Like you can go to another state and you'll see different cultures, but
right. I do feel like America should have been like 4 different countries though.
that would honestly kind of make sense because of how different people live and all the stuff. Like,
There's many different cultures here.
Yeah.
Like for obvious reasons.
There's something extremely interesting to me about the whole conversation about culture. According to a lot of Europeans, the US is a place that lacks culture. But that doesn't make a lot of sense because the US is actually one of, if not the biggest exporters of culture in the whole world. That's one of those things that really shocked me when I moved abroad. Everyone is exposed to the aforementioned American media and therefore American politics and current events. American music is everywhere, it's ubiquitous. Honestly, you could say I'm an export of the United States, and I'm not sure I could argue with that. The US is like always the loudest kid in the room. And even just cities like New York are an explosion of art. And it's
Yeah.
one city in a giant country. So what are we saying here really? What are Europeans referring to? I don't think these big mainstream exports are what Europeans are referring to. I think they're talking about what you do on a day-to-day basis
Yeah.
and how much that can change from region to region. I'm talking about the customs and traditions that have been passed down for generations, the different regional dishes that come from centuries ago. I'm talking about the superstitions or the different card games or the celebrations that take place that commemorate something that happened before modern day France or Austria or Italy even existed. Bizarre linguistic quirks, beyond the fact that there's a different language every direction you look. Architecture that changes every few hundred kilometers or miles. Am I suggesting that the US does not have customs and traditions? No, it does. I think about Thanksgiving and Halloween and hot dogs and baseball, the Super Bowl. There are a lot of things. It's a big country. But one thing all of these things have in common is that they stretch across the entire expanse of the country. The US, for better or for worse, is associated with uniformity and scale. Maybe that's just a facet of being such a young country. For better or for worse, Europeans see the KFCs and the Starbucks that are dotted across all of their major cities,
that is
and they
true.
see that as the mark of the US and how it operates. Now,
That's
a
true.
lot of Americans know this, and some even criticize this, right? But it's still happening. I just personally have a sinking feeling when I see the same exact strip mall in any state that I might go. And it does feel like the only way I can see the same thing in Hungary and Spain is if I go to a major chain, a lot of which are American. Again, maybe this is because of size, you know? A 4-hour train ride can take you to any one of like 7 countries in Europe, and you're lucky if a 4-hour flight will take you outside of the US. And I think a lot of Europeans take pride in this cultural richness, the density of different things going on, you know, being able to go to a different place so easily and not understand a word.
that is cool.
One major difference for me between the Europe and US is the language element. And I know I care about this more than most people, but I do think it has an impact on your experience of each place. And it's one of the main reasons why I moved to Europe. Yes, you have all kinds of language diversity in places like Miami and New York, which is really cool. But overall, English will do the job in the US. That's really not the case in Europe. Yes, English is the most international language, but still to this day, not being able to speak French when you're in France means you are not having the full French experience. That's just how it is. And honestly, I love living in a world where there are many different languages and many different ways to say things, and that we don't all necessarily understand each other. For me, it's very stimulating
seeing or hearing the different sounds
Yeah.
and different ways that people can communicate with each other. It adds a lot of color to the world. Yes, I speak Spanish, but if I go to Barcelona or spend time in Catalonia, I don't understand.
It's so true because just want to say, if you already watched our vlog channel, you know what you should. And you saw the Spain vlogs, when I would like speak in Spanish, because I speak Spanish regularly, not like 100%, but I'd say like 85%. But I know like Mexico Spanish. So then I had to think like, okay, a month ahead of time, I have to kind of like see what are the dialects of Spain and other stuff to like practice that a little bit, because it was pretty different. And
I mean, you could get around, but you could tell, like,
yeah,
you know.
and it did feel really cool to hear the different languages and stuff, because there was obviously other European people there. But like I said one thing in like Mexico Spanish, and the waitress just looked at me like, "What are you doing here?" She looked at me. I remember that one.
I remember you commenting on it, but I don't remember her.
Yeah, well, I
actually
just said, and I was like, "Oh, I'm supposed to say ¿qué tal?" instead of that, and I'm like, "Oh, got it." Yeah, it's just funny.
I speak Italian, but Southern Italians are difficult for me to understand. Partially because of the accent, partially because of the dialects. It's just awesome richness that I appreciate so much. And kind of counterintuitively, it is precisely because there is that barrier there, that it's difficult to learn a language, that it's difficult to decode how people are communicating, that when you do unlock that door, it's like that much more incredible. That is what makes languages so amazing to me. They're world expanding tools. I fell in love with France. And
I don't know if you guys have seen, but like they're so cringe, the videos where you see like the older white American lady, "Speak English, you're in America."
Oh, like the Karens who fucking lose their shit.
And I'm like, do you realize how many people live in America with different languages? I'm like, I don't think people do, but yeah.
No, because like he was saying earlier, we are kind of taught to think we're the center of the universe. We don't really learn outside of our own history, and even our own history is rewritten too. Like, we only learn what's gonna make us look good.
Yeah.
And how can you not have some form of like superiority complex when you think that you're like literally like the favorite child of the world?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of adults that, and I'm talking more boomers, not like Gen X, that can't fathom anyone ever wanting to even visit another country. Like, they just cannot understand why anyone would ever leave America willingly.
Yes, I do think I think there's half and half, and I think this is with every generation. I do think more of the generation now wants to go and travel and see the world, but I also think like there was a lot of people who from a little bit older generations who they saw their parents always hardworking and never taking time off, never leaving. So then they say, well, it's not right if I were to do that. You know what I mean? So they have that mindset to be like,
I don't see that.
I think it's happening.
I'm sure it's there,
because there's a lot of people from the baby boomer generation that love to travel, and they're in Southeast Asia, they're in Mexico, they're
that's
over
not
there.
what I'm saying. I'm saying the majority here.
You think it's a majority?
I think it's the majority,
I don't
at
know.
least of the boomer generation.
Maybe in Europe, the older generations like to travel more.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we were just in Thailand and we saw the genie lady. She was older. She was traveling alone. Like,
But that was
she
rare,
was cool.
yeah.
Yeah, and she was from America. We only met like maybe 5 Americans while we were out there.
Yeah.
And which was nice.
I will say a lot of Russians in Thailand. But yeah.
Right now, yeah. So yeah, she super cool. She was telling us a little about her life, but like, that's rare.
Yeah.
You know, and
That's
I
true.
don't think she started traveling until recently, from what it sounded like when she was kind of.
She probably
going into
retired or
it.
something.
Even
yeah.
her mom was her daughter was even like worried about her because it's not like, you know, I do think that, you know, with social media, it's easier to see other parts of the world. So then people are like, wait, she looks kind of nice.
Yeah.
She looks kind of fun.
The lady
It
we
doesn't
saw in
look
Spain.
like everywhere is a third world country.
The lady from the U.S. that we met in Spain too.
Yes,
yeah.
so cool. I forgot.
She was super cool. Yeah, that too. Same.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I think it's rare,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's
It happens.
possible.
Still.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say the reason why I could see European, like older people traveling more is because it's so easy to get from country to country over there. It's like a 4-hour train ride, 3-hour train ride.
It would make no sense not to travel.
Yeah,
if you lived
exactly.
in Europe.
Yeah.
France and with Europe when I did my exchange in France, because I was forced to learn the language. I just had to. It was like learning how to think in a new way. There's something
Yeah.
so exciting about that to me. Without that, I would have never immersed myself in France. I would have never created the life that I have now. Speaking the language is often the difference between having a superficial tourist experience
Yeah.
and delving deeper into the culture. I like to think of it as overcoming the moat around a castle so that you can actually storm the castle itself. Who doesn't want to see what's inside that castle, you know what I mean? Speed of life. One of the things that really struck me the last time I went back to the US is the speed of things and the fact that there are less guardrails, less people and things that are going to slow you down or get in your way. And because of that, many people go very fast. In the US, for example, it's perfectly socially acceptable to wolf down a sandwich in 3 minutes and get right back to work. I'm not saying that's what always happens. I'm just saying that it's okay. People are not going to judge you. It's like a acceptable thing to do. And people will walk down the street eating, or they'll eat in their car. And in Europe, you're never going to see those sorts of things. Or if you do, it's like a extremely rare. I don't know. I can't remember ever seeing it personally. These things are not okay. They're looked down upon in exactly the same way that smoking is looked down upon in the U.S., which goes to show you human beings are willing to draw different lines in the sand. Europeans will tell you it's not healthy, right, to eat that fast. It's rushed. But it goes beyond that. It feels almost morally wrong. I think that's a good spot to pause and introduce a new concept. I have this running theory that there are two forces at play in shaping culture. The first is peer pressure.
Sorry, I'd stop before the next thing. I think maybe because I have this problem where I eat so fast.
Brian eats like it's his last meal
And
every meal.
I don't know if it has to do with anything like this, like coming from this culture, if it's more normal. I don't know, but like.
How was it in Texas when you would grow up? Do all your friends eat like that? Like,
Yeah, I think so.
see, that's, I don't know. There's times where, and I've always been someone that eats slow, not because I was taught to, but genuinely,
But it's like a health thing too. I didn't even think about that.
No, it is.
Yeah.
I've always been someone that likes to like
Take your time.
like yeah, like it's really fucking weird how I eat. I don't think it's like I'm enjoying it, which I am. I do like to savor my food, but I'm not consciously like I need to eat slow and taste every bite.
It's
and
just a
chew
natural
this
thing, yeah.
No, I think that somewhere in my brain, I think this could be my last meal. Sounds so bad. So I almost like ration my food to take longer than it needs to.
Mine is done in like a second.
Brian literally, you would think he like snorted his meal down. Like it's insane.
I don't know.
He
Man.
like breathes and it's all just vacuumed up into his
I still enjoy
body.
it, but I don't know.
think he does. I don't think you sit there and
Well-
enjoy it. And even when he really likes something, he'll be like, "This is so good," and I'm like, "Why wouldn't you eat slower if it's so good? Like, enjoy it."
Okay.
But that aside, like, yeah, it's not healthy to scarf down your food. You need to make sure the more you're chewing, the less your body has to spend energy digesting it. So I think that's why you get bloated sometimes, and that's why
Yeah.
you're sitting there like, oh, my tummy hurts.
All right, let's continue.
There's always a certain kind of pressure that exists enforced by the people around you on how things should be, how you should operate. And the other idea is normalization. It's seeing a certain kind of behavior that's very widespread around you to the point where you get desensitized to it and you find it normal. So let's talk about some examples of this. I want to talk about work here for a second, which feels very related to the speed of things in my mind. The US is a super competitive society. There's a lot of peer pressure to work harder and longer, and if you don't, somebody will be there to replace you. No guardrails, no off switch. So it leads to a more imbalanced way of living, I find. This leads to a dynamic where there's very little vacation time. And not just that, people don't take that vacation time. You're lucky to get even a couple of weeks, but it's been normalized to not even necessarily take that time. That becomes a sort of like self-perpetuating cycle. It does feel like there's a fear of stopping. So there's the peer pressure and the normalization of work that's taking place in the US. And the same is at work in Europe, but just in a very different way. In Europe, I feel a sort of peer pressure to not work at certain times, like on Sunday, because it's seen as insane and unhealthy. And because
I will take that. However, the work-life balance here.
Yeah, it's like non-existent.
I feel like when it comes to work and productivity here, everything is like, I consider it like masculine energy. It's super just like accomplish, like just keep doing it, and
I think that's, you're thinking of it as masculine energy from like American perspective, because I don't think around the world they don't think of it like that. People are just like, they just see it as human beings needing to take a break from their work.
Right, but I'm saying that I think no matter what your gender is or whatever the hell, I don't want to get into that discussion, that every person, period, if you're a human being, we're supposed to have like a balance of like masculine,
of course,
feminine energy.
Oh yeah,
and I feel like here we live more for like,
not I guess more aggressive, I guess.
Which is masculine to me.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And then it like kind of, I don't know, you kind of get shamed for not being as productive here.
Well, you get,
and that's why I feel like sometimes you'll hear me say this, and I'm sure you felt this along with many other people in the world, where if you are resting, like it's so difficult for me to genuinely take a nap unless I'm like really sick, even if my body needs to rest, because I equate that with being lazy and non-productive, and I could be doing something productive.
You start to like self-shame, or like you shame yourself.
It's like
because
guilt.
Of it.
And I know that that's all stuff that I've been fed. It's not the way I actually feel.
Because you're looked at here, if you're taking a break, you're looked at as like lazy a little bit. Like you're not, he's not willing to just push through and do it. Like it's like that.
You're not willing to be exploited enough.
Sacrifice and all that stuff. Yeah.
You don't want it that bad.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway.
As Europeans,
but I do feel like that exists in a lot of other parts of the world too.
Treasure their vacation time and really stick to it. It has a normalizing effect. I don't look at time off in the same way I used to. I'm coming to realize it's good to unplug, to recharge, to not have everything revolve around work. So there's pros and cons to both sides here, because I think the US is a really incredible place for the ambitious if you want to advance your career. And that feeling of ambition all around you can be infectious. I felt it as like a fresh wave of energy. The only thing is, it doesn't feel conducive to a healthy rhythm over the long term. And the thing about grocery shopping, I was seeing a lot of people order on Instacart or Uber Eats or whatever. And it's not like those things don't exist in Europe, but there's like an emphasis on efficiency in the US. Here in Europe, a lot of people will shop for groceries on a very regular basis, almost daily or every other day, for fresh produce, and they'll buy in season. There's nothing really efficient about that, but it is healthier and tastier. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about acceptable behavior, because it's related to this point I made about peer pressure and normalization. There are clearly different ideas about work, but also just what is acceptable behavior in general. I find that there's a lot more of an anything goes kind of attitude in the US than in Europe. Growing up, each year there would be a pajama day, which was this really fun day where you'd go to school in your pajamas. I did this when I was 11.
I remember that.
12 years old. And I'm not sure what happened. Maybe this has always been the case and I didn't realize it, but it really struck me that I will see adults, full-grown adults, walking around in pajamas in the US. I saw it when I was there just a few weeks ago. I have never seen that in Europe. And in fact, it's funny, the opposite's taking place here in Paris, where women in my life in particular will come and visit, and they feel they cannot go out without dressing well because Paris is such a capital.
This is where I draw the line. Although pajama day was definitely something in elementary school, I don't really see adults going to work in pajamas. Look at me. This is something I'd wear in bed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's something, the way we value like productivity, I do notice that a lot in Europe, even in like Japan, they value
to look
fashion,
well, like to dress well.
Yeah, like looking put together.
Yeah, I've heard Paris is a huge thing for fashion.
Of fashion and looking good, I guess. I do draw a link, I don't know how related they are, but in my mind they're connected, between this casualness and the American dream. You're allowed to dream about things that feel ridiculous or impossible. And maybe that contributes to the startup culture that exists in the US, the entrepreneurial spirit. And of course, I should say there's nuance there. There are differences between the coasts of the United States and the middle of the country. There are differences across the different countries in Europe on this particular issue and all issues. But still, I feel a different vibe when I'm here in Europe. And I have found that this has had a positive effect in my life. This is one thing I'm really grateful for from my time in the US. It's this mindset of like going for it, taking risks, and figuring out a lot of the rest later on. Look, I'm aware that there's a lot of psychoanalyzing going on here. And maybe the way that I see the world says a lot more about me than the world. I'm open to that possibility. But what I love about making these cultural comparisons is the fact that it's always a reminder that there's more than one way to live life. I think a lot of life is shaped by our values and the things that we choose to stand by. And a lot of it is based off of what resonates, what feels right. If you have the privilege to travel or to move to another place, it can be a world-expanding experience. But even if you can't do that, being aware of the biases inherent in living in a particular place, because there are always biases, can lead to a richer, more well-rounded experience of life, I think. Life is full of trade-offs, but I do believe in the power of picking and choosing what works for you. You deciding what your trade-offs are to the extent that you can. I really try my hardest to embody the best of all the places that I've ever lived in. It's just fun, I guess, to see how different groups of humans operate. And I think we can better appreciate the world with contrast. Anyway, I hope this gave you some food for thought, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of pros and cons to anywhere you live.
Yeah.
Some are more pros and some are more cons, but I mean, to each their own, you know?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things done differently within the U.S. and Europe. The only thing not the only thing, but one of the main things that I really do envy is just the putting like people first and kind of like allowing everyone, like rich or poor, to have access to things. That's like the one thing I think that it causes too much stress here in the United States for people that aren't wealthy or don't have a lot of money.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's as much a sense of community here because you do kind of feel like
there's division.
Like, well, yeah, but I'm saying like I feel like it's too much of a business. Like the way politics are run here are too much of a business, which I get to a degree. It is.
Yeah.
But also,
think of the people a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know. And I've said this many times, and I stand by this. America is just too big of a country. Too big of a fucking country.
We need to divide
United States of America, because I know people get moody like, you're not the only Americas.
The Union of the States. That's what will be the
right. So,
so we'll split up into
United
different.
States is too big to be one country, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know.
I agree with that.
Thanks to Nathaniel.
Yeah, it was a really well edited and well thought out video. Yeah.
I like it.
If you guys like that, make sure to check out the original too and subscribe to him. But also like and subscribe here and jump over to the vlog channel, guys. All right. We appreciate it. Peace.
Bye.